Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the SHEILAMAC Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the SHEILAMAC Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest Vanessa Shaw. Vanessa is a highly accredited and internationally recognized business success coach. So whether you are seeking more income, making a bigger impact, or enjoying greater freedom, Vanessa and her dedicated team of professionals at the Business Growth Academy can help turn your entrepreneurial dreams into reality. All right. Welcome to the show, Vanessa.
Thank you, Sheila. Excited for our conversation today.
Yes, and one of the first things I like to ask guests is, this show came about after my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And we have experienced more rock bottoms than any other time in history right now. So we are going through these situations. And I'd love to hear about a time maybe that you could share with the audience when you experienced a difficult situation and how you got back on track.
Oh yeah, because it's great, right? We've got to paint the real picture. It's not all rainbows and unicorns or whatever else we might be talking about. So honestly, it's quite some time ago now, but it was so pivotal in turning my business around. And then honestly, what the whole premise of the Business Growth Academy is, that I'll share that story. So we're probably looking at something around 2010. I'm thinking now. I'm not very good at remembering dates. I had a big client that I'd been working with for many years, big retainer, built my business inside of their business, was kind of thinking I was flying high, right? And I put all of my eggs in one basket. And essentially the short story is, overnight, I lost that contract. The truth is, it wasn't actually overnight. That's the story version of it. The truth is, it wasn't overnight. It was actually over a period of months. And I was just scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't think I'd be able to ever replicate that client, and kind of had a bit of a head in the sand approach of, I've still got some time on my hands, until, that contract came to an end. And it represented probably about 85% of my income at the time. So it was massive. And by the way, the deal I had was a really good deal with them as well. So this wasn't just, a couple of $1,000s a month. This was a, kind of high six-figure retainer. And all of a sudden it's gone, right? And I've been up leveling my life, making a lot of changes, had enjoyed all that extra income for probably the 4 years that I had it. And I wasn't looking at the numbers in my business. I wasn't running my business like back then as, really a kind of serious CEO and business owner. And my Swiss accountant actually called me up to tell me that I was heading for bankruptcy. And at the time, that was all in French. It was one of those scary conversations. And it started off with the, ooh la la, Madame Shaw. And I was like, oh, shoot, I know something's coming here. And I literally had close to, I think, about $2,000 left in the business, with obviously payments and, other things, commitments, that needed to be made. And I had lost all of my clients, right? I mean, the ones that I had left were so small that they really weren't going to be making the difference. And that was one of my really low moments, right? It was like oh my gosh, the shame of that, how could I have got myself to this place? Everybody thought on the outside that I was successful, that I had my act together. So I was experiencing a lot of shame, a lot of guilt now about what I was putting my family through. an embarrassment, frankly, that I hadn't figured things out. And it's like, why didn't I know what to do? Why wasn't I looking at my numbers? Why had I abdicated responsibility for that to somebody else? And it was honestly, Sheila, one of those days when I remember saying to my husband, if I don't get out of bed today, nobody will notice. That impact that I wanted to have in the world is not happening. I've lost a big client. I could kind of just, go back to being who I was before, which, by the way, was a stay-at-home mom previous to that. And kind of nobody would notice. And it was a very humbling moment of, wow, I'd said I wanted to make an impact. I was coaching other people to be impactful. Here I was in a mess. Mm-hmm. Long story short, though, instead of kind of going under, I had that moment of throwing in the towel, right? I indulged in that and I was like, no, I am here for a bigger impact. There's got to be some good that comes out of this and some learning. And I set about that year, the year I was going bankrupt, I actually replaced that income in the same year, completely replicated it, and started to A, take my business seriously, B, look at the numbers and build a system for how do I constantly fill the pipeline, get new clients in, never be in a position again where I've got all of my eggs in one basket. Right. And fast forward, I guess, how many years are we now? About 12 years on from there. This is really one of the keys in what we're helping people in the Business Growth Academy, because I realized that, by the way, I'm not the only person that doesn't look at their numbers or understand them or know how to kind of get a consistently full pipeline of clients. And so this has become something that, through those mistakes, fortunately, many other, particularly women, have been able to benefit from that, big mistake of mine.
Wow. Well, that's something that happens to people. And what a beautiful story that you were able to get back on track quickly within a year and find new direction that's even better and more aligned for yourself and your family. So that's something that happens a lot. And there's being the talent, and then there's being the number person, and they're not always the same person. So it's a good thing to delegate at a certain point, for sure. I had gift stores when I was younger at 23 going forward. And I remember President Clinton spoke at the community college, went to lunch at Rocky Cola Cafe in Montrose, California, and came to my store, and the Secret Service showed up first. And I thought, oh my gosh, did I not do my sales tax right?
Oh gosh.
Away, am I going to jail? What's happening? And then, and then here's the president at the time. And so it was an experience that taught me. And the next day I hired a CPA. And I said, you know what? As good as I was doing it, it wasn't perfect. And she actually made amendments to the returns that I had done.
Yes.
We don't round numbers for the taxes. And I was like, we don't?
No, why not? It's kind of easier, right?
I was like, I'm doing the best I can. So that's it. So delegation, you don't have to do everything, but when you start out, you feel like you do.
Yeah. And I think the key that you've just said there as well, because it's a really important distinction, delegation does not mean abdicating responsibility. Mm-hmm. I had abdicated responsibility. Right. So again, as the business owner, it's like I wasn't on top of those things. I wasn't, giving it to somebody else. But again, and that's such a key distinction. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh no, somebody else can do the work, but I am still involved, overseeing, learning what that needs to look like. And, I'm the one that's responsible for growth. I'm the one that cares most about my business. So like, let's put me back in the driver's seat here.
Yeah. And that's something I always knew. I could just like put my finger in the air and be like, I know exactly the account balances, the income, the expenses. I always knew that. I just didn't know how to do all those forms and fancy things.
Yes, all the other stuff.
Yeah, and I was so young when I started. And honestly, I still don't like doing those things, but I like to know where I'm at.
Of course.
So I can make the right choices. And that's really important to oversee, because you never know who could be doing something not so right that you hired. So you do want to keep a check.
Totally. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for new entrepreneurs that feel like they have to do everything because their budget is really strapped starting out?
Oh gosh, that's always such a great question. And you can't give a cookie cutter answer for that, because of course there's a whole load of things where we can say it depends, right? It depends on so many things. But I think there's some good principles. At the end of the day, we do have to do a lot in the early days, right? We as you say, bootstrapping, bra strapping, whatever that title was. I'm like, oh, that's so good, because you do have to. I was very fortunate. Like, my first website, in fact, all of my websites is what my husband's grown with me. But my husband was cobbling those together for me, because he's got techie abilities, right? And so, I didn't have to pay people for those things. In the early days, yes, I was doing everything myself. I was scheduling the appointments. I was getting the clients. I'm doing the work, right? You were just wearing many, many hats. But for me, I think, a couple of things was, as quickly as is humanly possible, we need to get some help. Mm-hmm. And for me, there's just some things that, in fact, there are two recommendations I often make is, A, don't do your own bookkeeping. And, because to your point, you could even think you're good at those things, but it's not the highest use of your time. And somebody else that's really got the skill set will be able to set it up a lot better than you. The other one is even as simple as having like an admin assistant that can do things like scheduling and, just some of that basic admin and organization. I got myself a VA for, I think it was 10 hours. Actually, it might even have been 5 hours a week, actually, when I think about it. And we're talking a long time ago now. Mm-hmm. But just that 5 hours a week was enough to get some of that draining stuff off my plate, because it wasn't that it was just 5 hours. It was the stress, it was the procrastination, it was the fact that these things were so draining, right? And taking my eye off of other things that I could be doing to grow. My advice as well is always don't hire for where you are now, mm-hmm. hire for where you're headed. Right. And I see that's a massive mistake, because people say, but I can't hire now. Well, yes, because, you're looking at the current circumstances. And if we always think from that place, that we'll never make investments in the business. And entrepreneurship is, inherently there's risk, right? I mean, it's kind of what we've signed up for. Now, that's not to say this is kind of blind risk and we're, not going to be smart about things. But, I see that a lot of times people, again, are hiring friends that aren't gifted, frankly, family members, thinking, oh, well, it's cheap labor or free labor, and they end up in so many messes, mm-hmm. as opposed to having a few people that are like, no, they're skilled in those things. They're actually going to do them quicker than you are. And it's about freeing you up as the business owner to actually work on business growth, not just the day-to-day stuff. Otherwise we just never grow. We're just always going to be stunted. So I think that, hiring where you're headed for where you're headed. And as you know, Sheila, nowadays, I mean, there's so many options. It doesn't have to be, I didn't take on my first employees till probably, I think about 9 years ago now, 8 or 9 years ago. Well, I've been in business for myself for 16 or 17 years. But again, freelancers, VAs, virtual assistants, if people haven't heard of those, you can hire some help for just a few hours a week, mm-hmm. to get that ball rolling and frankly build the muscle as well of delegating and being supported, because we don't always have those skill sets when we start up our own business either.
Yes, that's so true. Now I can go back, and I hired people that were much smarter than me. I was 23 opening these gift stores when I started out. And I hired people from the top stores, Nordstrom's, the Broadway when it was open, all these Macy's, and they were mostly ladies, and they had children. So I offered childcare on site with 2 nannies and flex time. And so I said, I can't pay you what these other people, I can't give this kind of commission. I just started out, but I can give you your children and these nannies, because I also had children, so I already had to have help, mm-hmm. anyway. And that got me top talent. They were twice my age plus, and they were like, I can't believe you're my boss. You're so much younger than me, honey. But I was like, you know what? But you know what you're doing. And so sales, I was able to buy 4 commercial properties in California based on purely from the sales of the business.
Yeah.
And so that's what made the difference. Is I was not the smartest person. I just hired.
I mean, that is such great advice. And I love what you said there, because as you say, if you are all, and it's a massive trap, right? Because if you're always the smartest person, then you are always training other people, which again is draining, right? And there's only so far that we can actually go with that. We want to train people on our way of doing it and our vision and mission and values and everything. But as you say, if we've got to skill up everybody, it's going to be exhausting. But what I love, what was so creative there, is that looking outside, outside the box, like you can't compete on the numbers, right? When you're hiring that top talent, but what other benefits, right, are going to be really beneficial to them, whereby they'll say, oh my gosh, like this sounds like a no-brainer. Yeah. And I'm imagining as well that they could see that there was that path to be better paid, right, once things started to grow as well. But as you say, at this point now, they've actually got their kids back.
Right. Yeah. And they actually stayed with the company for years and years, and we're still good friends because of that. It was more like an extended family. And I was like, if you cannot be at work, I would prefer you not come to work, because then the clients will feel that energy. What's the point? You're not going to make sales if you're not really present. Don't show up. It's going to save me money. And so that always worked out. And every time there was a big sale or a special event, concert or something in town, they all showed up, because at that time where they didn't have to show up, and it made it
smart.
Yeah.
It sounds like you built an amazing culture there as well, right? It's just sounds like
doing my best copying all the leading companies. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, well, what's Nordstrom's doing? What's all these big companies? What are they doing that I could do? And so that was it. We even did a field trip to the mall, and we would see, now, how does that clerk treat you? All right, let's go to this other store. How about this? What is the difference? Oh, they handed you the bag and they thanked you and they talked to you like a person, versus taking your money and being rude, or the wrong music playing, or the environment, it wasn't clean. It was like things that couldn't be said, and we just had fun. That was our day outing. It was a learning.
Yes. It's such a smart thing to do, right? Again, it's simple and yet so powerful. I was actually in Nordstrom yesterday myself, so you actually take it. I had one of my first shopping trips out in a long time. So.
Yes. They always have such great things there. I can't resist. And so one of the things that I'm wondering also with your business growth programs, how do people start to work with you? What does it look like?
Yeah. So we have a kind of very particular niche of where we have worked out that is our sweet spot, which I think advice for anybody else is we've got to really work out where can we be really good? Where can we really excel in something, right? Not try to be everything to everybody. And so our audience now is primarily women, business owners, service-based professionals who have already got a proven concept. So they're already typically got their business to high five, sometimes about 80,000 to 125, 140, somewhere in that kind of mark. And they've hustled, they've cobbled things together, they've figured it out and all the rest of it. And they've got to that place, and they typically come to us. They want to grow, but they are maxed out. So time becomes the issue. And it's like, well, I want to grow, but I just don't know how to. I've got so much that I'm doing. I'm wearing all of these hats. I'm now having to do stuff at night, get up early in the morning, or otherwise getting extra hours at the weekend just to kind of keep this thing going. And typically their revenues have plateaued because they're limited with time, right, at that point. So this is where we've found that that's my sweet spot. I can see so clearly there the changes that they need to make. And of course, some of those changes are ones that they're frightened of making, because they're like, I've worked so hard to get it to this point. I'm worried, right? If I make some changes, kind of it'll all come falling down. And so a lot of what we end up helping them with there, and this is kind of really, really key to scaling the business, is many times they've got way too many things that they're trying to sell. So a lot of my business owners are not the Nordstroms, and nor should they be, because they're way too small and it's service-based. but they really should have 1 to 2, right, lines of service that's like really core. So they use the term even before talent and expertise, and that they actually start to scale up around that so that they can look at, they could deliver it, say, in a 1-to-1 kind of high-end relationship, or otherwise they could be in a position whereby they could start to do something in group and or bring in some other, right, professionals that could start to deliver. So we start to like really streamline, like let's look at what that core offer is of what you most want to be known for, and start to look at scaling up there. Now, the next thing is, it's not just the offer, it's, because I always say, if you weren't going to be paid, like if you were going to be paid on results only and performance only, what can you really stand by and like make a really bold promise around? That question tends to just get us out of all the noise. Well, I do this, 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 and this. But it's like, no, you're only going to be paid on outcomes. Now, what is it? So we start to get really focused on that. But once they land there, then I've got to go to, given those outcomes, there are perfect prospects that they must have certain criteria in order for them to get those outcomes. Just because you can deliver that, again, we've got to look at that match. And so again, that really helps them think about really dialing in like their ideal clients. We sometimes call them champagne clients in my world. Kind of champagne, wine, and beer is like how we divide them up. It typically doesn't require too much of an explanation. And they'll often say, oh my gosh, like the idea of champagne clients that really respect my work, that are looking at me as a trusted partner, a trusted advisor, not nickeling, diming on me on my fees. Oh my gosh, that would be a dream.
Right.
Oftentimes, though, they've only got a couple of them in their business right now, and the large majority are, let's say, less than ideal clients. They've outgrown them. So what we're looking to do there is to say, like, let's look at who those champagne clients are for you, and now let's reverse. Instead of that being like the 80-20 rule of 80 are non-ideal and 20 you'd love to have more of, I'm going to flip this around. So that makes a massive, again, massive difference to the business. Obviously there, we're also looking at repositioning, like repackaging their services. Most of I'm sure you've come across this as well, but most of our service-based professionals tend to talk about their services in terms of like the time we're going to spend together, like process, or we're going to have this amount of sessions, or we're going to do this, or we're going to have this amount of meetings, and we're going to go through this paperwork, or all those different things. And it's like, it'd be like the accountant saying to you, we're going to fill out this form and you're going to have this meeting. And it's like, actually what you want is you want the books balanced, you want the maximum profit, you want some great tax strategies, right? And you want to sleep well at night. And the other stuff is immaterial as to how you get there. So we're often showing them like how to build their services into an offer that's compelling. So it's clear, right? It's compelling and speaks to their ideal clients. And that for me is foundation. I mean, that is an ever evolving process. But once they start to get clear there, what we find is they see then the value, like they start to really see the value that they're providing. So confidence goes up. Now, when it comes to, a lot of my expertise is in pricing as well. And they'll all of a sudden see that, oh my gosh, I've actually probably been undercharging, over-delivering, right? Giving away a lot of stuff for free. And so those moves there, when we start to make those moves, typically will free up time, because oftentimes I can quickly show, listen, you could be working with less clients and getting the same amount of revenue through the door, if not more, but we're going to free up time. And now with that freed up time, now we're going to focus on business growth. So we've got to solve the time issue first, at least a little bit of elasticity then. And then I go on to my strategies of now we've got some free time. What are we dedicating it to?
Right. Wow. That makes a lot of sense. And, there's something about not everybody is the perfect client. And, you don't want to be with a client that's not aligned. It's better to refer them to a friend or some other coach, or consultant or whatever the business is, so that they can get the results they want. But it's not your client. It's just going to take away from your time and drain your business. And that makes so much sense. I learned that a long time ago, and there's people that I do refer out to because I can't help them, but that's okay. I know who can help them.
Yes.
And I feel that the most important thing is to get people will come back or refer you to the people that are aligned when you set that standard.
I couldn't agree more, Sheila. And I think the other thing that comes up there is that, it's a scarcity mindset, right? This, I need another client. I'm worried about where the next one's going to come from. So as you say, the less than ideal one shows up. And oftentimes, every time I've asked my clients across the board, and how did that work out? There's always a story. Disrespect, they didn't pay their bills, they were draining, they were this, there was drama, or team members were upset. There's always a story. And so when we've done it enough times, I mean, obviously I've been doing this, probably thousands of clients at this point. I'm like, trust me on this one. But you've got to let go to grow, right? And a lot of that letting go can be letting go of taking on the clients that you would have done previously. To your point, people will refer less than ideal clients as well if you keep taking them on. So it just keeps that going. And the opposite is true, that when you get really clear on who you can help and get these really amazing results for now, again, those referrals and those introductions are going to be at a much higher level.
Yes. And there's something about, we go into business, obviously, if you're a consultant, a coach, you're going to help people. That's your heart is in it for that. But whatever business we go into as entrepreneurs, it's so that we can have time. And we don't have that. We tend to be all in the business, and then we lose the time that we wanted to create for family, for lifestyle. So what do you do with clients that are really struggling with that, where it's upside down and they're just giving at the office and they have nothing left for family? And
oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. And again, we see it a lot, right? So again, it's keeping it real. It's not just once in a while, especially in the entrepreneurial world as well. So again, typically, again, with us, with business owners, it's a lot of it is we start with mindset, right? We've got to shift the way that you're actually thinking about this in the first place. So if you think that you've got to be, working hard, if you think that that's the only way to get validation, right? If you're, concerned about upsetting people because you're saying no to them or whatever, it's like we've got to shift some of those things first. And first and foremost, for us, it's also about, let's get some priorities straight, right? You said that you want to go into business for freedom, right? It's typically the word that's used. And that means, time, as you say, with your loved ones, time reading a book, traveling, whatever those things could be. It actually looks very different to people. Yeah. But what they don't sometimes their business strategy, right, or business plan, or frankly, lack of, I would say more 9 times out of 10, is not going to get them there. So you've got the plan and a strategy that is just like if you wanted more freedom, what does that look like? Well, the way you've got it going right now, there's no way you can get there because, you're looking at business growth through perhaps a very linear way, and, it's going to be you doing all of the work. Well, then you've said goodbye to freedom. So for me, a lot of it was, I kind of give that harsh message of, what does freedom really look like to you, right? Like, let's paint the picture. Let's just not talk about freedom because it's too, as I say, we can't get our hands around it. But what does that mean? Does it mean not working weekends right now? Does it mean, frankly, having a one day off at the weekend? Because we can't always just flip the switch. What is it you want to be doing with your kids? What is it you want to be doing for yourself? So get very clear on that. And then for me, when I'm working with our business owners, I'm just very straight around, if you are planning on being a solopreneur and that's the way you want to grow this business, then you need to accept that freedom is the one thing that is going to be eluding you.
Yeah.
You've got flexibility in what you do, but that whole time freedom and everything else, and wanting to go off to Maui and have this amazing vacation, being completely unplugged when the dollars are still flooding into the bank account, I'm sorry, my friend, it is not happening. And so, often when we have that conversation, they're like, Oh, I totally get it. You know, they're experiencing that already. That's why I said that's our sweet spot. They're experiencing the pain of that. And then they're ready to actually, you know, do something different, which is to say, starts with that. Yeah, we can kind of restructure their offers and kind of what they're selling.
Right.
The next thing for us, though, is I'm going to help them grow up, you know, ramp up their revenues rapidly so that they can actually invest now in the growth in their business to get team, to get support, because those are the things that will actually start to contribute to the greater freedom.
Yes, yes. Now, for me, I worked 14-hour days running that store, 17 years. And
Time.
didn't take much of a vacation, but I did invest and I bought the buildings. I invested. And so I created passive income to travel for 7 years straight and just have fun and contribute in ways I wanted to, and teach school at my kids' school when they were older, and do all these things just really because I wanted to be around my kids more. And that. So it was wonderful, but it's creating that business with the plan of how are you going to have the income continue if the business changes? What's the, I guess, exit strategy maybe that's nobody thinks of.
I know, nobody does. And I'm saying in your case, okay, you were putting in the hours, right? And I take my hat off to you, because I've actually, if anything, been, I think, the lazy business owner, because I'm like, I just don't want to work that hard. So I think I had to figure out another way. I was just like, oh, I just don't quite work that so hard. Let's say I don't want to put in those hours. That was the thing. I didn't want to ever feel that tied to the business. But in your case, you were figuring out the income piece, right? And which is the smart move. And that's why we say we've got to ramp up, you know, income, because the income will be able, you're better to buy certain things and solve problems with that you can't when you don't have it.
Yes. I mean, I was able to travel to buy the products and do things like that. I went to all the shows, the gift shows and this and that, because I had teams. You know, there were 5 operating stores. So with that, you have to have people. And I got into real estate because I started investing and got my license. And then at the park, the shopping park, all the other store owners were like, how did you do that? And they were twice my age mostly. I was like, I'll show you. And then I had my license, so I would start making sales on the side. And, you know, obviously I had a team with the real estate side because I couldn't do anything full time. I just learned how to delegate a lot.
Yeah.
And the people that were able to invest in buying their place of business back in the day when business changed, or they got sick or wanted to retire, they had something. And those that continued to pay the rent and didn't invest somewhere else, maybe either, they would invest in their house. They would pull money out of their house to fund the business in the bad years. And a lot of them went out with different, you know, 2008, whatever, and different situations. So it does make a difference in planning. And if you don't have a business plan, even to start, you don't even know where you're going.
I know. And you say it's heartbreaking, right? Because this is, again, it's, you know, people's livelihoods, right? It's their futures. I mean, it's all of these things that are at stake. And as you say, if you got to have a plan. I'm not somebody, you know, anybody even listening to this, I'm actually not somebody that believes in detailed plans. You know, like a roadmap. Right. Some people think of a business plan, right, and they immediately think it's like a 68-page document that they've got to kind of like, you know, map out everything. But no, that's typically for when you need investments. It's like a different thing. But the truth is, you can do a plan on one side of paper. You know, it doesn't have to be that complicated. But then you've got a roadmap, right? That's the piece. And as you said, like that, now you kind of go, okay, now I know where I'm headed, and that plan also needs to dictate, like, what am I focused on every single week to actually make this happen?
Yes. And what is the course corrections that you need to take? Like right now with our interesting pandemic, there's course corrections that had to happen, even for investments and real estate. I mean, there's just a lot of change on our planet right now. And I was going to do a speaking tour, and now I do everything online with the show and different going on other people's shows all the time. And so that's how I get my message out. And I'm teaching courses in Australia, South Africa, all over the planet that I would have never even done had it not been for this crazy pandemic. So
I love that. And I think, you know, I know a lot of my business owners as well, they learn to say, you know, obviously we actually launched, I mean, here at Sheila, we actually launched a brand new program in the pandemic. Like the day that the world went crazy in the States was the day we launched. I was like, you've got to be kidding. This is business growth program. And businesses were being shut down. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, like, is this my second near bankruptcy moment? And actually it wasn't at all. It's actually been massively successful. And to your point, one of the things was shifting people's mindset around what's now become possible through the pandemic. And I know for a lot of our business owners, especially when it came to time, they were wasting so much time traveling across town, face-to-face meetings, getting in their car, doing all of these things that they then realized, actually, I could just be in one place. And as you say, see clients all around the world, see clients all over the state or all over town. I don't have to be stuck in traffic.
Right.
So even something as simple as using the technology and realizing, no, we don't actually need to like meet people face to face. You might want to once in a while. That's very different, but you actually don't need to. And, you know, a lot of our business owners, again, were seeing that. And as you say, you know, being flexible to, you know, there are going to be changes, and that's a big part of business growth. And yes, we have plans, and they don't always, you know, we can't always work the plan. So, you know, something happens, but we've got to have that flexibility to actually look at, okay, what are the opportunities that I've now got? And those I think we saw so much of that in the pandemic with people that unfortunately, there were a lot of people that just got completely into fear. And a lot of scarcity and a lot of, you know, this won't work anymore and people aren't buying and I can't possibly sell and talk about what I'm doing in business in this climate. I was like, you definitely don't want to be tone deaf to what's going on. And we've got to be compassionate about, you know, there are real people suffering here, and there's still a whole lot of people that are thriving and working out how to do things differently.
Right. Right. Yes, it makes all the difference to be able to course correct and be flexible with the plans, because life happens, things change. And if you had to put yourself on hold for a moment, your business, if you're listening in, and that's okay too. That doesn't mean it's over. It just means maybe you had to pull up your sleeves and help your spouse, or homeschool the kids again, or because schools were closed, or something else showed up and that was the season. And now as we're starting to get back on our feet, what can you do now? And how can you slowly rebuild where it serves your family and your lifestyle that you want to create? I think, how does lifestyle design fit into what you're doing with your business?
I love that you actually said that, because it's true that there could be a lot of people that, again, really suffering right now, feeling a lot of shame and guilt and all of those other things that we can go to. And I think if there's one thing that the pandemic has taught so many of us is around lifestyle, right? And what's important. I think that's one of the gifts that's really come out of this. And so actually lifestyle, interestingly enough, was always important to everything that we did.
Right.
It always was. I mean, we've never not been kind of teaching about that. So for me, the philosophy is very much around building a business that will support the life you want to be living, right? Not the other way around, right? You know, is like, and again, that comes down to, yes, well, what type of revenue do you want to have? Like, what's the impact, you know, contribution you want to be making in the world? Freedom, what does that look like to you in terms of time freedom or creativity, self-expression, right? These different things. So lifestyle design has always been important. I think now more than ever, this is a time for people to actually really look at. You know, a lot of people don't want to go back to offices. We've got a lot of people that were in corporate, that work from home, that no longer want to go back. And we're seeing a whole new, you know, group of budding entrepreneurs, you know, consultants or freelancers, whatever we want to call them, because they want a different lifestyle. And so for me, you know, my way of looking at that is to reverse engineer. It's about, and again, if somebody's starting out, it's not reverse engineering it 20 years out. Even a year out can be great. Like, where do you want to be a year from now? Imagine that, you and I were meeting and we were celebrating an amazing year where you're proud and satisfied with your accomplishments. What needs to have happened in that year, right? Get super practical around that and put some of those, put some of the numbers on that. The amount of revenue, what amount you've got to pay yourself. In business, it's not just about revenue. It's, in fact, you need to pay yourself first, because otherwise you'll be going back to a job if you can't sustain it, right? But again, like really mapping those things out, that's, we reverse engineer into lifestyle. So that a lot of our business owners, they're actually living the life as they build their business. Not necessarily the ultimate, of course. I'm not living my ultimate life right now. I'm living it in a way better way than I ever imagined. And there's always more. But that's the way, again, we can start to build that muscle and actually see that business can support the life. But we've got to start it now, like not wait for 10 years.
Yes, that's so good. There's something about the reality that if you're having trouble in life, maybe a relationship, a divorce, a death, something happened, it's going to affect your business, and your business affects your life. And this is the craziest thing I found, is that when I give myself time for the self-care, which sound, you think, oh, this is counterintuitive. How could this possibly be? I get more done when I go to my club that's where I moved to, has this whole lifestyle wellness, club, 10 classes a day and personal training, all these beautiful things. When I go there and do that, I actually get more done. I'm more productive at work because I gave myself that promise. I committed to doing something for me, and I actually did it.
Yep.
And so that's something that it doesn't make any sense. My house gets cleaned better. I mean, because we haven't had cleaning people since this crazy pandemic. It's like, I miss that. But it's cleaner because I went and exercised and took a walk by the lake and did stuff with my kids that are grown, that are home, and things get done because of that. So there's something about it actually fuels your business success when you think, I've just got to put in another 20-hour day and then I'll go play.
Do you know,
it's that way.
We discovered exactly the same thing, right? And, everyone's heard the, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? If you're ever, God forbid, in a plane that's going, in trouble, in order to help other people, you've got to give your oxygen to yourself first. People get that rationally, they understand that, but they say that they don't practice it. Yeah. And so to your point, with our new program actually that we launched, we had really been preaching this for years, as I say, lifestyle and everything. I was always like, don't wait. Like, we need to incorporate it now. And this is like an integrated lifestyle in business. It's like, it's business and lifestyle can all flow together. And we're not waiting for like one to be at a certain point before we start to do certain things. And so when we launched our new program, and we run it like in 100 days, it's like an accelerator. Interestingly enough, our clients they set goals in 4 areas. And the areas are body, love, leadership, and business.
Nice.
In that area, and we're actually saying this is about fuel and energy, just to your point, right? The body is that fundamental source of energy. And if your health goes as a business owner, I mean, as I say, we know, and so many of us have been dealing with COVID, and I had a husband that was hospitalized with COVID as well. I mean, we know full well that these things stop. And so we were like, we're going to prioritize this as your business plan, that you would think about those goals that are for body and exercise or nutrition, whatever they want to be for you. Love was all about, let's be intentional about the people that you've said that you are doing this for, yourself, spouses and kids. But like, I want you setting goals around quality time with them and date nights and one-on-one time with kids, because again, otherwise we end up feeling so guilty, right? And then leadership is actually all about who you're being in the world, right? Really, how are you showing up and leading, whether it's, through your content, your communities, teams later on, I'm setting goals there. And we see business is actually the last goal. But those other three